Mike here with the Elevator Consultants. We're on site here. We're on the south side of Chicago. We're at a medical facility. We're here to survey everything here to run a modernization process. So we're going to take in all the details in the job, figure out what we got. We have been on site here before. We're just looking to brush up on some details. So this setup is relatively unique, and you'll see that as we start to kind of walk through everything. I might as well show you now. So up here you can see with our darker color with the number 6 on it, that's our control system. These are made by a company, or were made by a company called Dover. They are no longer around, unfortunately. They made really good equipment. This control system is from 1977, still running, but it's time for it to go. So really, with this older equipment, with folks that are trying to get something more reliable, you might be saying, well, I've got older equipment, it's been running this long, why do I need to replace it? Well, there's a couple reasons. If you have microprocessor boards, those may be obsolete, so trying to get replacements for those boards could be difficult. The other side is you might be saying, well, I don't have microprocessor boards, maybe I've only got relay logic, which puts you at somewhat of an advantage, but you're really starting to get to a disadvantage based on technicians that know how to work on that equipment. Most of the mechanics that are coming up nowadays, they've learned on microprocessors. The mechanics that are really experienced on this stuff, 1970s, 1980s, there is some newer stuff with relay logic. Those mechanics grew up on this equipment, they installed this, they ran modernizations with it, they're very familiar with it, they probably have service routes now. Many of those guys are retiring and they're getting replaced by the newer guys that just don't tend to have that experience going into it, just because they weren't around for it. So not saying they don't have that experience, but having a guy with that background obviously is advantageous for you, especially in a medical facility like we're at today. But anyhow, so what I was trying to explain to you, so we got our control system for number 6, and we could see our gray tank behind it. That's our hydraulic pump unit assembly. These were installed by ThyssenKrupp, I believe, in 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. So we can see we've done some upgrades. If we consider it an upgrade, and it's not a modernization, when you replace the control system, which is going to be our Dover controller here, everything has got to be brought up to code on the elevator. If we only replace a component, whether it be a pump unit assembly like we're looking at here, or a door operator, whatever else it might be, fixtures, you name it, cab interior, those would be considered upgrades. So controller, pump unit, typically those are right next to each other. So we're at 6, and now we're at number 7, no controller. Obviously we do have a controller. We can follow our conduit, runs up into the overhead, comes back around, and we're laying down here. They decided to put number 7 over here in the corner. I'm not positive why they did that. I actually cannot explain that. There's plenty of room over here, but you can see they had these elevated pads. Maybe they had equipment here at one point, and that's just it. It made the most sense when they did this. I don't know. I wasn't around for it, but that's one of the unique setups for this. We've also got 2 passenger cars here, 2 service cars, so 2 duplexes working together. These are not working together, all 4 as a group. So we're going to look at each one of these. Because it is a medical facility, obviously we've got different requirements for the service elevators. We're going to be moving stretchers, medical equipment. So we're really going to want stuff that's robust. When we perform this mod, we're going to want everything really tuned to what the building needs. So you might be saying, well, what does that mean, tuned? That really comes down to door adjustments, really fine-tuning the elevator to make sure it reacts predictably, and most importantly, we're not having the doors close on folks. So we can see all of our hydraulic piping running underground here. It's nice of them. They painted our elbows here in bright colors so we don't trip on them. But really, based off the age of the equipment, obviously the controllers are going to go. The pump units, these are probably roughly halfway through their life cycle. It would be advantageous to replace all this together, get everything on the same life cycle. especially for a medical facility. The less we can impact operations here, the better. So if we decide to replace the controllers and leave the pump units, and we move forward during the modernization, and we have new controllers here about halfway through the life cycle of this controller, when it's modernized, the pump unit will most likely need to be replaced, or we're going to end up replacing major components, which we're probably not going to be able to see those under here. Let's see if I can get this. Oil levels coming back up. But that's our valve back here in the back. It's a ThyssenKrupp i2. A lot of mechanics love this valve. Then there's also quite a few that don't like this valve. It really comes down to your experience. But overall, it is an excellent valve. It's been around forever. It's really Dover's i2 and i3 valve, just rebranded as Thyssen. Thyssen did acquire Dover. But down here we can see where all the wires go. We consider this a submersible pump unit, so our motor and our pump are down here in the oil. But like I said, if we ended up hanging on to this, we're probably going to have to do a major repair at minimum halfway through the life cycle of the new controller. So if we can avoid doing that, we'll do it that way. Also, there are other advantages to doing everything together at once. Typically, it's cheaper to replace everything. You're not paying individual markups and margins, which are much higher if you do a repair or an upgrade versus combining everything together as a mod. So we're going to run through all the equipment here, get all the details we need to write up a scope of work to modernize this, but it's actually pretty nice in here. We're starting with something relatively clean. The mechanic that is taking care of this job, it does look pretty darn nice, just based on the age of everything. Having everything painted, it gives us a good indicator. Hey, is there something leaking? What kind of issues do we have here? If our machine room floor is not painted, you end up getting oil stains in the concrete, and it becomes very, very difficult to figure out what's new and what's old. So it just helps us identify stuff. But also part of the modernization, if we look up here, smokes, sprinkler system, this is all going to be taken into account. Overall temperature and humidity control in the machine room for climate control. You can see we've got our split unit on the wall. Actually, it looks pretty new. Sorry about that break. The mechanic, his ears must have been ringing. He walked in after I made a compliment on how nice the machine room looked. But mechanic here is an awesome guy. Obviously, you can see he takes pride in his work. But yeah, very cool stuff. So let me see if I can open up one of these controllers. Seeing if anything is out of service. Looks like everything is in. We can probably pull number 6. Get our cover off here. Actually, got to set you down for a second. So here's our internal workings of our controller. You can see right here all the contactors and relays snapping in and out. Our starters down here, they consider this a soft start. It's all going to get replaced during the modernization. You can see we do have microprocessor boards here. It looks like stuff has been added on to the elevator over the years. That one's ThyssenKrupp. So overall, this is really what it is. But like I was mentioning before, based on technology, this is going to get replaced with microprocessor boards during the mod. More than likely replace the hydraulic pump unit assemblies, unless there's any kind of budgetary constraints. All of our fittings down here for the Victaulic oil piping, we're going to get all these replaced. We're really going to start fresh. There are components that we can and should reuse. Some of those are going to be inside the hoistway, but really these are all the details that we're looking to capture and take in and write an accurate scope of work to get an elevator really with at least 25 years of life cycle out of it. So if you're looking to modernize, give a company like us a call. We could survey your property. We can give you an idea of life cycle expectancy, any kind of disadvantages you may have with parts availability, skilled mechanics that are in the area that are able to take care of the equipment, life cycles that are left. We can give you budgets, all that good stuff. And if you want us to help you with the modernization process, we strongly recommend getting a scope of work written. That way, when you're paying all this money for a mod, you get everything on the same life cycle, and you really end any kind of out of service times over the life of the next equipment that's going to be installed. So here's some machine room equipment. If I have an opportunity to, just based on where we're at in the medical facility, I'm not sure if I can get some good stuff in the hoistway for you, but if I can, we'll include that as well. But if not, this is what we have. We call this our modernization phase 1.